Governor of California, Gavin Newsom, says Donald Trump is hoping for chaos by sending National Guard troops into Los Angeles to help quell protests against raids targeting undocumented migrants. The governor is urging demonstrators to stay peaceful, saying violence will only justify more crackdowns by the White House. Tonight, federal agents from the Department of Homeland Security clashed with protesters, while on social media, Mr. Trump said the demonstrators were led by radical left activists and they wouldn't be tolerated. Well, John Sodworth is live in Los Angeles for us tonight with our top story. John.
Well, you can see the National Guard members standing behind me. California National Guard, it says on their riot shields there. They've been deployed just as President Trump said they would. And on this side, you can see a crowd of a few hundred protesters. They've been shouting things like, "You work for us." And although it's been overwhelmingly peaceful throughout the afternoon, we have seen a bit of tension with tear gas volleys being fired on one occasion. And this crowd is furious at what they see as a major breach of precedent and protocol in American politics, overreached by the White House. The first time, Clive, in 60 years that the National Guard have been sent in to a US city without a specific request from a state government.
The National Guard on the streets of Los Angeles, here ostensibly to keep the order. But the deployment itself has caused a political storm. 2 days of protests have seen sometimes violent clashes between locals angry about immigration raids in the city and law enforcement using tear gas and rubber bullets. There have been a number of arrests. LA's mayor has called the decision to send in the National Guard unnecessary posturing. California's governor says it's pure political spectacle orchestrated by President Trump. But Mr. Trump insists that the troops are needed to restore the peace.
Well, we're going to have troops everywhere. We're not going to let this happen to our country. We're not going to let our country be torn apart like it was under Biden.
Even the city's police force, however, says the protests have so far been small and they don't need the extra help, with many residents also left baffled about why the National Guard has been sent in.
I think it's an intimidation tactic. I think it's trying to make sure that people don't come out and give protests. They don't come and protect their fellow citizens, their fellow community members.
They came trying to intimidate and scare us, and the community is saying no, and that's what caused people to be angry.
It's pretty obvious to most people, I would think, that this is their response to that. They don't like being criticized. Trump does not like being criticized, and this is how he has responded.
The protests were triggered by the arrests of dozens of immigrants. California is the world's fourth largest economy and relies on this workforce. Many Democratic politicians argue that those working without documents and who pay their taxes should be left alone. At one point, one group of protesters tried to stop a bus carrying some of those detained. But Mr. Trump, basking in a standing ovation at an Ultimate Fighting Championship match in New Jersey, insists he's fulfilling his mandate to crack down on illegal migration and that no one can be allowed to stand in the way.
John, things look relatively peaceful where you are, though tensions could, of course, shift. And how much of this situation is actually the result of a dreadful relationship between President Trump and the governor of California?
Well, what shifted in recent days and weeks, Clive, is the administration's targeting of immigrants has shifted from a focus on immigrants with criminal records, the sort of hardcore immigrants that Donald Trump promised to go after on the campaign trail, to what many see as much softer targets, the thousands and thousands of undocumented migrants who staff this country's farms and restaurants, and that these protesters say ought to be left well alone. Of course, Mr. Trump claims he has a mandate. Immigration was at the centre of his election campaign, but it is very clear that that tension you speak about, that was there long before these protests, is beginning to show in terms of that relationship between states like California and the White House. And there is no doubt that Democratic politicians like the Californian Governor Gavin Newsom believes that the National Guard are now being used as political pawns in all of this, purely for political effect.
All right, John, thanks for that. John Sudworth live in downtown LA.